Hello everybody, this is YonMan2400, and today I wanted to talk about Ghostwire Tokyo. This is a game I had heard a bit of buzz about before it came out, but had absolutely no idea when it actually did come out. After playing it, I wondered why it didn't get as much attention, and that's what I wanted to talk about today. Ghostwire Tokyo was released on March 25th of 2022, developed by Tango Gameworks, best known for The Evil Within and its sequel, and published by Bethesda Softworks. I personally have never finished any of the Evil Within games, but I was surprised to learn that Tango was behind it because Ghostwire shares little in common with what I have experienced so far from the Evil Within series. Ghostwire Tokyo is a first-person adventure game with some light horror mixed in. Set in the Shibuya ward of Tokyo, it depicts a dense urban landscape devoid of human life and invaded by evil spirits, and they utilize this dissonance to make a really spooky atmosphere instead of flooding the game with jump scares. Don't get me wrong, there are some moments that made me jump for sure, but for the most part it was all atmosphere, which I prefer. You play as Akito, who is a man who nearly dies in a motorcycle accident going to the hospital to meet his sister. He's able to escape death when a spirit named KK possesses his body, but Akito is strong enough to keep his consciousness alive. This begins a spooky adventure together through the derelict Shibuya, trying to rescue your sisters from the villain and trying to get vengeance for KK. The story, much like the gameplay, isn't very new or innovative in terms of story beats. Bad guy steals your sister, go to get her back, but to do that you must become powerful enough to defeat the bad guy. However, the content that makes up those story beats I thought was really awesome. If the title didn't clue you in, Shibuya has been invaded by evil spirits, and some evil bad guy is taking people's ghosts to power some kind of ritual. This makes you the last human being in Shibuya, and all of the NPCs are spirits of some kind. Everything has a feeling of high strangeness to it. The enemy designs and how they move, and the collectibles and locations you visit. This, however, was not entirely translated into the main plot, which was a little disappointing. You would go from exploring and fighting things that were all very strange and gave you a sense of mystery, and it was all very elusive, to a cut and dry, good against evil main plot, with a generic bad guy and a generic goody good guy. A really fun part of the story, however, is the relationship built between KK and Akito, the dual main characters of the game, and is a classic story of two people at odds becoming fast and close friends. Everything about the story, from the character development to the main plot, is mostly good, but when put up against the really interesting and detailed world that was built, it all just feels a little lackluster to me. The gameplay for this one is not incredibly innovative, but it has a very strong foundation. You have 3 elements that you can use to shoot enemies with: air, fire, and water. Each is unique in its moves and applications, with air being a low damage single target attack, fire being a high damage single or AoE attack, and water being a large sweeping arc of middling damage. Once you damage an enemy enough, they will become stunned and open to a finisher move. But this finisher takes time to do, so you need to be clear of enemies while doing the final takedown, or you'll eat some damage in the process. These 3 attack types and the less than instant finishers lead to really engaging encounters. When you see all of the enemies on the field, you need to make a quick plan on how to tackle it, or you can run the risk of taking damage or dying. To mix things up even further, each element has a light and heavy attack variant. The heavy attacks take time to charge and do much more than just increase damage. Air becomes 3 shots for 1 ammo. Fire becomes an AoE explosion, and water really is just a bigger wave with more damage. There is a stealth mechanic in the game as well, but there isn't too much emphasis on it. You can instantly take down unaware enemies from behind, or once you get the bow and arrow, you can shoot them from afar without alerting the whole group. All of these systems together made a truly fun and exciting game from a gameplay perspective. All of the fights were fun, even if they were just little random enemies out on the street. And although admittedly it did get repetitive, I still enjoyed the vast majority of it. I've mentioned how I really like the environment and setting of the game a few times so far in this video, so I'd like to discuss it further, not only the setting but how you move around it. The movement in the game is really nothing to write home about. It feels sluggish and clunky at the beginning of the game, but eventually you do learn some more traversal options. And these are so much better than just running around the street. There are certain flying yokai in the game that act as grappling points, and you can even use skill points to unlock the ability to summon one anywhere, furthering the traversal options you have. There is more than that though, because you also unlock the ability to glide after putting a bit of time into the game. This allows you to glide horizontally through the air for a period of time before dropping to the ground. However, you do need to be a certain distance off the ground to utilize this, which was slightly annoying. You can't glide off a car, but you can off of some rails and buses. The activation of the glide is a little finicky. And these options don't outright fix the clunkiness I felt with the game, but they are a great salve for it. With the combination of the glide and the grapple points, it can be really fun to traverse the abandoned landscape of Shibuya. It switches up the pace from simply running around on street level and allows you to go from rooftop to rooftop, then going down to the streets and getting some stuff done, and so on. You also do unlock fast travel points as you go through the game, but I never particularly like using fast travel in any game. This is, however, an option for those who like to use it, but I would recommend running and jumping your way through the city that the developers made for at least a little while before using the fast travel system, because I really had a great time with it. I would really like to take some time to talk about the side quests in this game. I've never particularly liked side quests in the games that Bethesda has made themselves, so I unfairly imposed that on this game when I first started playing it. I was dead wrong. The side quests are far and away the best part of this game. There are enough of them to give you 4 to 5 hours of playtime, and it doesn't feel like your run-of-the-mill boring side quest. They range from being comedic, dramatic, romantic. All of the side quests felt unique and interesting to do. I helped a spirit pass on by giving him rolls of toilet paper because he couldn't wipe before he died. And then after that, I exorcised a malevolent spirit that was a hoarder in life and started hoarding other people's spirits by creating black holes around his neighborhood. There was such a wide range, and they were all really fun to play. Doing a side quest for me didn't feel like a chore like it does in other games. When I play a game, I like to try to do a lot of what is offered to me before beating it. So I oftentimes get sucked into the side quest grind and get bored really quickly. Many a Ubisoft game have gone unfinished because I got burned out on the side shit that I never got to the main story missions. It took infinitely longer for me to get burned out on these side quests because I was excited to do the next one every time. That being said, this does suffer from what I have started calling Skyrim syndrome. In this example, every main quest propels the story forward really well, which is awesome for the game. However, this is a double-edged sword as it creates a sense of urgency to immediately do the next main story quest, that it felt weird spending time to do side missions. Like, there's a massive hole in the sky, and the bad guy's doing some really fucked shit that I need to fix right now. Let me see what this random spirit has to do for me. Just makes no sense in my mind. It's similar to how I feel in the beginning of Skyrim. You escape imprisonment, immediately you're pointed to give the news to the Jarl, then he sends you on a really important mission, which leads to the next urgent and important mission, and so on. I wish Ghostwire would let off the gas at certain points in the story to justify my character running around and doing these really cool and interesting side missions. Before I give my generalized thoughts on Ghostwire Tokyo, I wanted to touch on the progression system because it does have one. The progression and leveling system in the game I thought was actually really well done. There are 3 skill trees, and you don't get enough skill points through leveling to unlock them all, so you have to cherry pick which ones work best for you. There is a tree for fundamental things like movement speed, being more sneaky, getting health back from finishers. There is the ethereal weaving skill tree, which governs upgrades for all of your magic attacks. And finally, the consumable skill tree, which will upgrade the effectiveness of your health consumables, talismans, and bow and arrow. Each skill tree, in my opinion, has its own merits, and I found myself investing a considerable amount of points into each one. This kind of progression system is pretty standard for games nowadays, but it is a really good system for replayability, allowing you to do different character builds every time you play the game, should you choose to do multiple playthroughs. The thing I like most about this system in particular is that none of the skills directly affect how much damage you're outputting. They indirectly do this, like giving you more shots to your heavy attack, increasing the radius of the heavy water attack. I love this because it holds you back. You are never able to become incredibly overpowered, and all of the little strategies that you've made to deal with certain enemies are still valuable in the late game. Some of the skills will change your strategies or make certain enemies easier to deal with, but simply increasing the damage dealt by attacks feels like a cheap power fantasy I could get anywhere else. The knowledge you pick up through the game makes you feel so much more powerful because it is you who's making the game easier for yourself, not the game doing it for you. All in all, Ghostwire Tokyo is a really good game, and it's only a few steps away from being great. However, it has problems with pacing, it has kind of a generic story, clunky movement, and the combat, although I did really like it, does eventually get repetitive. All those things held it back a bit. The core of a really great game is in there, with some things in there that just aren't so great. I really hope that Tango Gameworks sticks with this open world first person concept for their games and just improves upon it, because I would not be surprised if they put out a fantastic title in the next few years following this formula. Right now, I would say that the $60 USD price tag is not worth the experience. It was super fun. I had a great time playing it. However, with the problems that I had stated, and the fact that even after doing many of the side quests and obtaining a good amount of collectibles, I only got 12.5 hours out of the game. You simply aren't going to be able to get enough bang for your buck for $60 like you can with other games that do a lot of the same things. I would recommend playing this game, but just wait until it goes on sale or once it drops in price a bit before you pick it up. The setting, the atmosphere, and the side quests are super great, and I'm really excited to see what Tango does next. That's all for now, and thank you for watching.